Thank you, Kevin. As he said, I am one of our review consultants. And so a lot of the information I have here today is going to be things that Kevin has already touched on. I like to consider this the hotspots, Cliff Notes version of things that myself and the other review consultants are seeing as common areas of downfall when we're in the bank doing the review. So going back to the actual CTR form, one of the first things I wanted to touch on is you may have noticed on your screen in the manual that those have a lot of yellow fields. Hopefully, if you're a manual filer, you're aware of this, but if you're not, if you hover your cursor over those fields, there's a little help box that pops up that's often going to answer a lot of those questions you may have without having to go back through the manual and really dig in. So that's a really helpful tool in your CTR filings and even the designation of exempted persons. As Kevin also said, FinCEN expects us to fill out all the information that we do have available. One of those that we see missing a lot is the document number. We talked a lot about how if you don't have that number available, it's not required. But if this is a customer of yours, you have that CIP documentation on file, you've got the articles that were registered. If that information is available, we do want to see that number there. Another common area, especially with entities that we see an error, is in the address. Just like CIP, this requires a physical address. So even if you're mailing their statements to the PO box, we still want to see the physical address as required on your form here. Also with entities, if you have an alternate name, that's a field that we want to see put on the form as well. So if we have, the coffee shop LLC, but the sign hanging outside the business is Joe's Coffee, we want Joe's Coffee included. And as the instructions state, we also do not want to see DBA. When you put that piece in, it kind of messes up the way that their search functions run. So be aware of those terms that we're not supposed to include as well. Descriptive occupation is probably one that I see commonly, not just in your CTRs, but throughout CIP. We've talked about it. But for example, if Kevin Edwards brings some cash into my bank and I'm going to need to file that CTR, and what you put for his occupation and description is Kevin is the owner of his company, Tallgrass LLC, that's going to make my eyebrows raise. Now, if you put his occupation is he does lawn care, mowing, and landscaping, I'm probably okay with it. If his tall grass is more in the marijuana realm, now we have a whole different problem. So just make sure that those occupations are descriptive. An area where we see missed commonly is cash in to a joint owner account. If you have more than one owner on the account, this doesn't apply to your signers, only to your owners, you do have to identify all of those owners in the part one, whether they're physically present or not. If they're not physically present, you can rely on that CIP information you have on file to complete their information to the best of your ability. Dollar amounts, as Kevin said, this does not apply to regular math. If it's 1 penny and up, we always round up. So regular rounding rules don't apply. Just make sure you're always increasing those figures to the next whole dollar. Multiple transactions. We've talked a little bit about multiple transactions and aggregated transactions. If you have multiple items that you've processed, just be sure you check that multiple items box. It's really simple, but frequently missed. Timing, we get 15 days to file those CTRs. One thing that's a little different is that it's 15 calendar days, not business days. So if it's Christmas and you close early and we're closed for Christmas Day and then there's a snowstorm and you're off, if you waited to the last minute, you may be too late. So just be sure that you've got your 15 days. And we also recommend filing as soon as possible and not waiting to the last minute if we can on the majority of those filings. Another area that I've seen that doesn't happen often, but that RSSD number for your bank and the branch location, just be aware if your bank has acquired another bank, you've gone through a merger or acquisition, maybe we've moved a location, just make sure that we've got the current RSSD number, that's active, and that the proper change paperwork has been filed so that we have an active filing number there. Moving on to exemptions. For CTR exemptions, he talked about phase one. If you're a listed business on one of the 3 stock exchanges, that is eligible for exemption. Again, just be sure that we retain documentation of proof that stock exchange information is out there and they're exempt. Now this can get a little confusing. For your phase ones that are on the stock exchange, we've just stated that those are eligible for exemption. Do not confuse stock exchange and their subsidiaries with locally owned franchises. Where we see this pitfall is your commonly known, say, fast food, restaurant chains, your gas stations. So if we have Kevin's Burgers LLC and he's doing business as McDonald's as a franchise, McDonald's is not our actual customer. My CIP documentation when Kevin came in and he opened Kevin's Burgers LLC is on Kevin's Burgers LLC. So that's not eligible under your phase 1. They may be eligible under phase 2 if they've got over the 5 transactions each year over 10,000. They've been here 2 months or longer, meet the other requirements of eligibility. But we have seen some areas where that's caught people up on those big names. So just be aware of who your true customer is for the bank. Also on the exemptions, that documentation of the 51% from eligible activities, as we talked about, say you have your gas station, you're selling gas, snacks, drinks, and lottery tickets. Well, if we've listed all those things on our form, but we haven't tried to break down the percentage, that could bring into question whether that business is eligible. So it's more than likely we're mainly selling gasoline. If lottery tickets is 5% of their sales or approximately that, just go ahead and make sure that documentation is clear so that it's obvious that that customer is in fact eligible for that exemption. Monetary instrument log. As Kevin talked about, most banks are having that cash go into the customer's account if it's for a customer. Definitely allowed. But one thing that I want to be sure you caught what he said, that doesn't remove the requirement that we are able to track that separately for monetary instrument purposes. So if your customer brings in that cash and they immediately turn around and buy a cashier's check with it, we need to make sure that we're able to track those transactions for our purposes of what was purchased with cash for our monetary instruments, even though that money did go into the customer's account directly. So that's basically what I have for some of the big hot spots, the quick list from the field of what the review team is seeing. Kevin's done a great job of all the details, but we just kind of wanted to hit on a few of the core things that we truly see kind of day in, day out when we come into your banks.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Lindsay. And if you want to stick around and help me with some of the questions, Amy, I believe we have a handful of questions that are left. Again, I don't know, you may have answered all of the questions just in that little blip there.
Probably not.
But what did we have any that were submitted?
We do. Yep. First one, to create an exemption, doesn't the account have to be open for 2 months and they have to have filed 5 CTRs in the calendar year before we can exempt them?
That always used to be the rule. That's how it was set up. But then Vincent, and I can't remember if it was through one of the FAQs or if they actually changed the rule, but they came out and they did say that you could conduct a risk-based determination. And if you can, do your review and say, yes, this is going to happen, they will let you get away with doing it beforehand. Most financial institutions that I know, they still follow the old rule. They wait until it's actually that 2 months has gone by and that they've filed those 5 CTRs, because that's a whole lot easier than having to go out and document your risk-based determination. So.
And also to ensure that those are eligible activities still, even if they meet those other 2 requirements. Right.
Exactly. Good point.
Okay, we have 2 entities owned by the same person. Each had transaction cash ins of $54.70, $65.70, and then there was a night deposit of $19.40. So all over the threshold, obviously. 2 individuals brought in these funds of these 3 separate deposits. Would you aggregate?
Okay, well, first off, if they're 2 separate entities, even though they're owned by the same person, it doesn't necessarily mean you would aggregate those together. If they are 2 separate businesses and they're operating on their own, you may treat them as separate entities. But let's assume that it's the same person owning both of them, and so we have funds that are kind of going back and forth between them. So we're going to aggregate them just as a general rule. So we've made that determination. If that's the case, let's see. You had and correct me if I'm saying this wrong. We had branch deposits that came in. We didn't gather their idea because both of those branch deposits were below the threshold. And then we had a night deposit that came in afterwards that kicked it up over the threshold, right? Is that situation sounding right?
It looks like the two cash-ins would have kicked it over the threshold, but they might have been done by different people at
They
different
might have been
times.
done,
So
they-
yeah.
but whatever the case may be, after the fact, you realize we're over the threshold of filing a CTR. Under those circumstances, then I would say yes, you would click that aggregating box.
Okay. I have a scenario here where a trustee withdraws $15,000 in cash from his living trust. The tax identification number is the same for both the trust and the trustee. It says we have been filing two Part 1s, one on the trustee as the conductor and the other on the trust entity. Since the tax ID number is the same for both, could we file one Part 1 on the trustee and list the trust as DBA?
I do not believe so, because I think the DBA guidance specifically talks about an individual that doesn't have another legal entity. And since the trust is a separate legal entity, I'm going to go with two separate Part 1s. Does that sound right to you, Lindsay?
That's how I would do it to be safe. Yes. I know it's more work, but that's a tricky one. Everyone loves trusts.
Right. Right.
Okay. It looks like that's all we've got, guys.
All right. Well, then with that, I wanted to thank both Amy and Lindsay for helping me out on this one. But let's celebrate. We just covered a lot of material, and CTR, there's a lot of technical things in there. We review these all the time, and there's always problems that come up. This isn't one of those regs that you just nail and then you never have any problems, because there's so many easy things to mess up on this. So we covered a lot of material, but also we had a lot of great questions. We're going to get you written responses to all of those questions that were submitted today. But also, after you log off, typically what happens is you realize, oh, shoot, I should have asked Lindsay that question. I should have asked Kevin that question. I completely forgot about it. Here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and send an email to training@bankerscompliance.com. And if you put, I believe, what do we say, CTRs in the oh, hold on, let me get to the right slide here. If you put CTRs in the subject line, we will include that question in our written responses. So you get another bite at the apple. Go ahead and send that email, though. In about 2 weeks, we'll get both the video completed, and we'll get that delivered into your store, into the box in the store. But then we'll also get the written responses in there as well. So it usually takes about 2 weeks. But also, there's going to be a survey at the end, 5 short questions. Please fill that out. Let us know, good, better, and different, how it went, or if there's any other training or any other topics you would like to see us cover. We do look at those, and we try to bring our programs from good to great. But with that, on behalf of myself and the rest of the team, thank you for attending, and we're going to let you get back to doing what you do best, which is serving your customers. So thank you.